Coming up on This Week in Radio Tech, oh my gosh, I had to slide 1,000 feet down a mountain to get picked up by a helicopter at a lower elevation. It all happened in Hawaii, putting in an IP radio link and a backup transmitter. It's coming up next on TWiRT. This Week in Radio Tech is brought to you by Broadcasters General Store with outstanding service, savings, and support. Online at bgs.cc. By Broadcast Bionics with the Bionic Studio, including talk show control, social media, and visual radio. Broadcast Bionics brings exceptional audience engagement to radio and TV. By Angry Audio. Audio problems disappear when you get angry at angryaudio.com. And by Max Connect Wireless, prioritized high-speed internet service designed for transmitter sites and remote broadcasts. Hey, welcome into This Week in Radio Tech, the show where we talk about everything from the light bulb, from the microphone to the light bulb at the top of the tower. I just realized I forgot to turn my sign on. Charles Sather, who's a fan of the show, made this sign for me. There we go. How about that? That looks nice. There, now we got the nice blue sign on. I'm Kirk Harnack, your host, in the Telos Alliance studio in Nashville, Tennessee. And thanks a lot to my employer, my full-time employer, Telos Alliance, for giving me an hour and a half on Thursday afternoons to put the show together and bring it to you, and for really nicely outfitting my studio here. I can just touch a knob here and then bring some stuff up. It's just, I just love this place. Just awesome. Hey, but I don't do the show by myself. At least not yet, because Chris Tobin is still with me. Chris Tobin is somewhere in the New York City area. Chris, welcome into This Week in Radio Tech.
Well, hello. I'm actually at the studios, WBGO. I'm just in an office. It's a little warmer up here. The studio's a little cool. They're doing some work on the heating systems today. So,
yeah. Wow. Okay. Chris, this is going to be one of these shows where I'm the guest, and please ask questions when I forget to, if something's just not clear, ask away, because we're going to do a little show based on my experiences from last week. And I know you'll have some comments and questions, because the things that I'm going to show are a bit different than what you typically see in the New York City area. But hey, RF is RF. It follows the rules no matter where it is. Just that sometimes the where it is, is pretty interesting. So we're going to move into that. Hey, our show's brought to you by some great sponsors, Innovonics, Broadcast Bionics, Max Connect Wireless, and Angry Audio. So please do business with these companies and let them know that you heard about us. And hey, if you're watching a playback, a replay of this on YouTube, it'd be really great if you would subscribe to the channel. That helps the algorithm, makes it pop up in your feed from time to time. And if you want to hit that little bell to remind you that it's on, that'd be great. Hey, if you want to make a comment in the comment section on YouTube, that would be terrific as well. We appreciate you joining us wherever you do, whether it's on Facebook Live, on twitch.tv, on the GFQ channel there, or on This Week in Radio Tech on YouTube. Appreciate you joining us. All right. As a lot of you know, because I've done a couple of shows from there in the past. In fact, just last week, I was live in Lihu'e, Hawaii. Lihu'e is the county seat of the county and the island of Kauai. That's the westernmost island in the Hawaiian Islands, the westernmost populated island. There is Ni'ihau, which is not populated by regular folks. It's populated by some native folks who choose to live there. But anyway, for all intents and purposes, Kauai is the westernmost island. U.S. military has some installations there, looking westward, looking northwestward, looking over at North Korea, watching for things to come in. And, there's probably some big dangerous bombs or missiles there as well, because they can be launched from there. Also, it's home to, I don't know how many thousands of people live on Kauai. It's not a whole lot, but they sure get a lot of tourism when there's not COVID going on. Chris, I got involved with this radio station through a fellow who's been on the show before, Larry Fuss. Larry, about 3 years ago, found a small FM station licensed to Hanapepe on the island of Kauai, on the state of Hawaii. It was for sale, and he didn't have the money to buy it. So he got together 40 of his best friends and said, would you like to buy some shares so that we can buy this radio station and put it on the air, and we'll have a Hawaii radio station? That sounds all cool and sexy and fun. So 40 people got together. Some of them bought one share, like me. Some bought 2 shares. A few bought 3 shares. I think that may be the most that anybody has. Maybe somebody has 5 shares. I'm not sure. Anyway, we got 40 owners in this radio station. And I tell you, we're not quite making money yet, but we are paying the bills, just barely. We run it pretty lean. It's a one of these stations that's Star 94.3 is the moniker. In fact, here's the hat for our station, Star 94.3. While I was on the island, I tried to wear that a fair amount, Star 94.3. And it's, the kind of station that's the best of the 80s, 90s, and today. Our morning show is Murphy, Sam, and Jody. They are syndicated, but they are terrific. They do just-in-time voice tracking, and it's just very natural sounding. They're so cool. We have local Hawaii weather once or twice an hour. We have local Hawaii news morning and afternoon. And those are services that we subscribe to, and they sound great. And we have voice tracking from people in both on the mainland, and I think we may have some voice tracking from the island of Hawaii, from the state of Hawaii as well. So that's a brief description of the station. It's a Class C2 FM, but we're so over height that our power, our TPO, transmitter power output, is a kilowatt, or just a hair under. And then we have a 2-bay horizontal only antenna, which gets us about 2 kilowatts, just a hair under, of ERP, effective radiated power. We have a 2-bay horizontal only antenna, which, by the way, we'll look at a picture of it later, but it's basically, it looks like a fork. It's a U shape like that. Looks like tongs that you'd use to turn your hot dogs or turn your meat on the grill. So, we over time, I built the station 2.5 years ago. I had never been to the transmitter site. Never. We had a local engineer, Don Mussel, who's also been a guest on this show. Don installed our transmitter and arranged for our antenna to be installed and arranged for some remote control at the transmitter site. But Chris, the remote control that we had was via using a computer and an IP link, actually it's a 4G LTE modem, that was provided by the state of Hawaii, by the public broadcasting service there. And, that was very kind of them to let us use a few bits of data to look at our transmitter. We didn't have a backup there at the time, just one Nautel transmitter. But, we felt like we ought to get off of the state of Hawaii's link there. It's very kind of them to let us use that, but it's not right that we should benefit from that. We should put up our own link. So we also had the goal of installing a backup transmitter on at the transmitter site, which is Mount Kahili, which is a very high point, very inaccessible, and barely has electricity, but it does most of the time. And so our goal was to install the IP link and install a backup transmitter and some means of switching the main transmitter off and the backup transmitter on. We also, Chris, had a goal of installing a way to power cycle the main transmitter. The main transmitter is a Nautel VS1, and sometimes on the mountain there, we get power bumps, sometimes several in a row. And we were told by Nautel that this is not good for the Nautel transmitter. In fact, it's programmed to basically shut down after it gets several power bumps, several outages in a row in a short period of time. So we have had an occasion or two where the Nautel transmitter wouldn't come on because it thought there was a problem, and we had to operate on it. We have a little backup at the studio, but it only covers the town of Lihu'e. It doesn't cover any of the rest of the island. So we wanted a way to remotely power cycle the Nautel transmitter and switch to a backup transmitter if we needed to, and with a backup antenna. So those are the things. IP radio link of our own. We could have, we could have used Max Connect. That would have worked just fine. But we have clear line of sight. It's relatively easy to do. So we wanted to do our own IP link and then install the remote control equipment and the backup transmitter and antenna. So Chris, you kind of got the picture there. Does that make sense?
Yep. It makes sense. It makes total sense. Right. I get it.
Let's Chris, let's take a look at the first image here. We got a whole bunch of pictures to run through and some cool video. This is the island of Kauai, the westernmost island in the Hawaiian Islands. It's called the Garden Island. You've seen video of the easternmost island, the Big Island, gaining ground, so to speak, because there's the volcano that's erupting and putting lava out and actually building more island very slowly. Well, the opposite is true of Kauai. It's falling into the ocean, especially the western side of it. It's getting smaller as time goes on. There's also the little island of Niihau, which is not populated. Well, it's populated by a few native Hawaiians who choose to live without electricity and without much of any comforts. They choose to live in the the original Polynesian lifestyle, and that's pretty interesting. I've not been there yet. It's it's not very possible to go there. It is possible, but not very possible. All right, let's take a look at the next map, then we'll move through this. I wanted to get this link going. What you see here is a kind of a 3D view of Kauai, and our studio is on the right there in Lihu'e on the eastern side of the island. You see KHKU-FM studio with the yellow pushpin, and the transmitter site is I know it says Hanapepe, Hawaii. That's actually the city of License, which is down toward the lower left. The transmitter is on a ridge that is part of Mount Kahili. And it's a narrow ridge. There's barely room to put a building there. We'll see in a minute. So let's move on to the next picture, and we'll see a bit more of the launch point for the STL. So at the bottom of the screen there is our studio is in the white roofed building, the long white roofed building. It's a 2-story building. We're in the upper floor. Used to be a law office, and we're shooting 8.3 miles. And you can't rely on the red line there purports to show us hitting the ground, but that's not true. It's really kind of a ground track. I didn't know how in Google Maps to actually do this correctly, but you can see, the point is you can see where it has to go on the top of, not at the top, but just off the top of Mount Kahili. Mount Kahili is the highest point in the middle of your screen. Move on to the next picture. That's, by the way, 8.3 miles. And there's a view of Mount Kahili, and you can see that little tip that's just to the right of center. That's where the transmitter site is. That's where the building is, and the all the antennas on top of it. So we started to build the IP link. We got I had to make sure that they worked inside just fine, so I did that in the studio. That the IP link was worked. I named it correctly. We put some encryption on it and so forth. Next picture, we'll take a look at me installing the IP link. We had to run about 80 feet worth of Cat 5, Cat 6, maybe just Cat 5e outdoor rated cable. And so that's me stripping the wire and getting ready to put the connector on. Next picture is we chose an unlicensed Ubiquiti system. On the next picture here, we can see that I chose the dish that I chose is the one that offers a bit more rejection of signals from the sides. It's a little deeper dish, and it's supposed to send out a more focused beam and ignore more junk on 5.8 gigahertz from the sides. So I think the whole pair was $400, maybe $450 or so. So that's me getting ready to put that on there. Let's take a look at the next picture. I had a little bit of help. This was really tough to get up on this roof because first of all, you take a 25-foot ladder and you get up on the first roof, and then you drag that ladder up and you haul it across the roof to the second roof, and you climb up, but it's not tall enough. So you have to hoist yourself up the side. And we'll take a look at that picture. That's David Lister. He's our manager on site. There we go. Now the ladder is not in this picture, but this is the wall that we have to get up, and the ladder doesn't go to the top of that wall from the roof below there. It goes most of the way up, but we have to hoist ourselves up about 4 feet. I grabbed onto the pole. Now you can see the Ubiquiti dish on top of that pole, and that pole holds our backup to the backup now, FM antenna that just covers the city of Lihu'e. Our regular STL, you can see, is on the farther away pole, just barely above the roof line. So we have an antenna there that picks up our station. It's one of those, just an FM receive antenna on the very top, one of those cross-shaped ones. And then there's also an antenna there that receives the National Weather Service. I believe that's picking up the National Weather Service from the island of Oahu. I believe it's 107.
Now, VHF, it propagates well.
It could. I'm trying to remember if it's actually on island. It may actually be on island. I forget. Anyway, let's take a look at the next picture here. We have a little better close up there of the antennas after I mounted the IP radio link. Now the next picture, Chris, deserves some discussion. Let's take a look at the next one. I wanted plan A and plan B. So you've seen the Ubiquiti 5.8 gigahertz IP radio. And I was pretty sure that would work. Although I got to tell you, that 5.8 gigahertz radio, I was told would likely not work at the transmitter site because there is so much RF up there. Not that any of the stations are high power. None of them are above about 2.5 kilowatts, but the antennas are all almost on the ground. I mean, you are standing in the aperture of the antennas when you are standing on the ground or up in the building. And I was told that 5.8 gig radios may not work there. Now, as we know, 5.8 gig, that's nowhere near the FM band, but you've got routers and you've got Ethernet switches and you've got things like that may be overwhelmed by RF coming in from Cat5 cables as common mode. So more on that story in a minute. So I want to have a backup plan. This was the backup plan, a product that actually sadly is no longer made, and I can find no expertise on this product. And I wasn't able to get it to work, but I'm sure it was just me. This is a product from MikroTik, again, no longer made, called the Metal 9 HPN. Although it's that picture there is not the one that I had. This one says Metal 2 SHPN. That's not the actual product I have. I found this picture off the internet. I had the Metal 9 HPN, which is a ISM band that is 900 megahertz unlicensed IP radio. It's similar to the Mosley LandLink. You may have heard of that LandLink. Plenty of stations use it. Not particularly high speed, but you can attach it into your existing 950 megahertz radio system, your antenna and your coax. Now, I had the one I had from MikroTik will operate at either 912 megahertz or 917 megahertz. You can choose either of those two frequencies. And just hooking it up in the studio building and getting them close to each other, even hooking them up to a couple of gimmick antennas, I was not able to get them to talk to each other. And I could find no real help on the internet about these radios. So my backup plan is not yet implemented. By the way, I did buy from Microwave Filter Company. I bought the diplexers that would diplex, my 950 STL with this 917 megahertz IP radio and provide both signals to our transmit antenna. And then at the transmitter site, do the opposite. I had another diplexer there that would separate those two signals. But didn't get a chance to install all of this because I couldn't get it to work on the ground. So that's where, Chris, do you have any thoughts about that? Or do you know of anybody with expertise in
I've seen that product. Yeah, I know the product you're talking about. I've seen it. I don't know anyone offhand. I could have sworn that when MikroTik did those, they were actually, I think, OEM from somebody else. And I remember reading some weird stuff about it. Inside,
it's a MikroTik 2.4 gigahertz radio, and then it's got up and down converters to get you to 900 megahertz. And the problem with setting it up is it uses the MikroTik Router OS, which is a very wide-ranging generic interface.
Yes,
so you have a lot of fields in the setup of that device that do not apply to that device. And so it's a little cryptic as to what matters versus what doesn't matter in the setup of the device. And I just couldn't get them to talk to each other. I know there is I called one of the biggest MikroTik dealers in the country, but they're an enterprise type setup, and they have a 10-hour minimum charge to help you out. Yeah. I did find another consultant in Missouri who is a ham radio operator. He's done broadcast. He knows all about networking, and purportedly he has experience with that, but he's not yet returned my emails. So, yeah. Anyway, the good news is that was plan B, but I still want both to go in there, and it's kind of clandestine, right? I'll get into it after the break, but putting up new antennas is not always welcome at a site whose ownership may be in question. And not only do we have technical challenges at the site, but we have political challenges at the site. And I'm not
been there, done that. No, yeah, I know what that feels like.
And more to that story coming up, because the day we showed up, ain't nothing clandestine about it. It was crawling with people. Yeah. This remote, you can only get there by helicopter, practically speaking, crawling with people. We'll get to that. Coming up this week in Radio Tech, Kirk Harnack here along with Chris Tobin. We're talking about my Hawaii trip and the equipment that we put up there. Lots more pictures and fun to come. We'll introduce all that to you as we move along. Our show is brought to you in part by our friends at Broadcasters General Store, and specifically the Inovonics line of products, and this time the Inovonics Aaron 655. Take a break. Be right back.
The Aaron 655 is the latest addition to the Inovonics family of rebroadcast receivers, designed specifically for FM broadcast translators, also referred to as relay transmitters. The Aaron 655 is unique as an uncompromising DSP-based HD radio and FM receiver combined with a powerful 3-band audio processor and dynamic RDS encoder. IP connectivity adds streaming capabilities, and a web browser interface gives you total remote control of the unit from any PC or mobile device. The Aaron 655 gives you maximum flexibility for program sources. Select program audio from analog FM, digital channels HD1 through 8, streaming sources, and analog or AES digital line inputs, all with assignable failover audio backup. The internal RDS encoder allows you to customize your RDS messaging. You can use incoming off-air RDS data, convert HD radio pad data to RDS, convert streamed metadata to RDS, or receive IP telnet data. Comprehensive audio processing includes gated and windowed AGC, a unique syllabic leveler, 3 bands of compression, and both wideband and independent HF limiting. Easy setup is achieved by using 10 factory presets and 10 customizable presets. The processor also supports day parting, allowing automatic preset changes to follow different programming formats throughout your broadcast day. The front panel has an OLED display and jog wheel with intuitive menus for easy setup, advanced control, and editing for all operating parameters. The Aaron 655 dynamic web interface gives you total remote control of the unit from any PC or mobile device. A comprehensive set of menus includes a quick overview of now playing info, input-output control, processor options, RDS encoder, alarms and notifications, SNMP settings, and much more. You can also listen to the live audio broadcast streamed through the web interface.
One of the most useful devices anywhere on the market is that Aaron 655, and Inovonics is making a whole slew of products that are internet accessible and stream audio back to you. And Chris Tobin is familiar with their line of stuff too, including the Sophia line of products. Check them out at Broadcasters General Store, bgs.cc. That's where you can buy all these products from Inovonics. And I wish you'd go to bgs.cc or call them. Their number's easy, and they do answer their phone. The number's 352-622-7700. 352-622-7700. Thanks a lot to both Inovonics and Broadcasters General Store at bgs.cc. All right. It's Kirk Harnack at episode number 522 of This Week in Radio Tech. Show's all about me today. And Chris, yeah, kind of. So we were talking about this 9 HPN IP radio, and so if anybody in the audience, this is the kind of radio, guessing at how it works has not been helpful. If you, dear listener, if you have direct experience with the MikroTik 9 HPN or the Metal 9 HPN, I'd like to hear from you. I could use your advice, and we're certainly willing to pay for consulting on that. And I didn't bring them home with me, but they're getting shipped back home to me, so I'll have them here at the office and can work on them more later. I got to believe that they can work well. So let's move on through these next pictures here. I got to do a little envy here. This was a look out my hotel. Oh, no, that's not in the hotel. This is at the front of the radio station. Yeah, out the front of the radio station. Okay, let's move on to the next picture. Down the street, had to get some coffee, and this was just great. Talk about Hawaii. Rainbow Joe's. You could get breakfast if bagel, if you consider a bagel to be breakfast. Chris, I suppose you have numerous times in New York City considered
bagel with a schmear. That's breakfast. That's good.
Yeah, they have all kinds. Next picture here, we found our bumper sticker right there on the side of Rainbow Joe's. That's always nice to see. Kauai's best mix of the 80s, 90s, and now. And the next picture was Rainbow Joe himself, along with, look at that, Betty White. You just can't explain the stuff that you find in Hawaii. Next picture, we did our This Week in Radio Tech show last week from the studio at Star 94.3. There it was. And another shot. Next picture is the shot of our little setup there. So there was the webcam, the laptop, and the microphone, looking at our guest last week, Hal Neller. All right, let's move on to the next picture. The engineer who really helped us out, a lot of you might know this guy. He's been in Hawaii for a couple of decades or more, but he used to live in eastern Kentucky and built a number of stations and serviced them around there. It's Don Muscle. He's the guy in the middle. Don has been a real friend to engineers everywhere and to especially in the public radio realm. By the way, we took our masks off just for the picture. The rest of the time we had them on. Let's move along to the next photo. And Don has a beautiful lime tree out back. And I'm not sure it was entirely legal, but I did bring a lime back. We used it. We used that lime as part of our enchilada sauce. My wife Laura made some delicious enchiladas the other day. Next picture, Don showed us this battery storage system. He's got some solar at his house, which is quite practical in Hawaii. You've got a lot of sunshine. And he showed me these batteries. And Chris, I had not heard of this chemical makeup before. This Simplify company specializes in batteries that last for quite a few years, maybe even almost 2 decades. They're predicted to last. And they are lithium, but the formulation is lithium ferrophosphate.
Yeah,
lithium
I've read about those.
Have you? I've not. Tell me about it. What do you know about it?
I was asked by someone if there was a way to do some solar-powered communication stuff in the middle of a forest. I had to try and research ways to maintain a solar-powered transmitting system with the sunlight that we have here in the Northeast, which we discovered where they're located was not very good. You have to, it's not just plug in the battery, get sunlight, it charges. You have to have the discharge time, the recharge time. There's all these different things that go into solar-powered, setups. So I got to read about a lot of various battery chemistries, and there's some interesting ones out there. But I did read about that one, yes.
Don covered these, and with one of those little plastic boxes that you put on your porch or behind your house, or on your deck, to store tools and whatnot. So that's what the plastic boxes you see on. I mean, not the gray plastic box, but the overall enclosure enclosing these. They're sitting on his deck. But I thought that was I did not know about that formulation. Let's move on to some other pictures. We had to. I mentioned earlier on that the coverage on the island is not what we'd like. We're missing the northern part of the island, Princeville, which is very popular for tourists, and also the area around, just north of Kapa'a, we're missing. So here is a station. This is a community station, and they have a transmitter site that they use to cover the northern part of the island. I took some drone pictures. Let's move on to the next. Here's the whole site. We just kind of scoped out the site to see if, hey, would this be appropriate for us to put an on-channel booster? And next picture, I got a little closer picture of, you can see the antenna, and you can see their STL. It's actually two little mini flector dishes there. One of them points to a site that we'll see in just a moment. In fact, next picture will show the other site. They actually pick up off the air. You want to go to the next picture there. They actually pick up themselves off the air at this site from the grid, some FM antenna that I couldn't find on this site, and then they 950 megahertz it to the site we just saw. So this is a receive site right here. It's a hop site, if you will. Next picture, and we'll see a little bit closer of that tower. This is on top of a good-sized hill, and this is the hill that actually shadows the good part of the northern part of the island from where we'd like to hit. Next picture, and we'll just get one more shot of that hilltop site. Obviously, it's for communications, but this is not only it shadows the rest of the island, but it also then would make a good hop point to pick up an off-air signal and hop it to your on-channel booster. All right, next, let's make sure we keep the volume down for this video. I'm going to give you a quick tour here of the studios. We did this quick tour for some other friends as well. So here's the logo when you walk in. This was us marshaling all the gear that was going to go in the helicopter the next morning. So we shot this on Thursday evening after the TWiRT show, and all that was going to go in the belly of a helicopter into some bags and boxes for
is that a VHF antenna you got there? What's that? That silver thing?
That silver thing right there?
Yeah.
That is the backup. Side. Yeah, that's the backup transmitting antenna, vertical only. We'll see more of that. Yeah, we'll see more of that in a few minutes. It's I forget what brand that one was. It may have been I don't know, it may have been sold by Nikon. There's our some people warned me that they didn't think it was a very good antenna, but I assembled it on the mountaintop, and I thought it went together really nicely. I thought it was quite good. Little reception desk there. We just shot a little video actually for our other investors, people who had never been to the station before. And then we come around here, and that's the equipment rack with the security cameras and Ethernet switching router up on top there, and a NAS right there, the Synology NAS. There's our analog STL transmitter, our Omnia 7 audio processor, our Axia Ethernet switch, our Axia nodes, plus an off-air tuner, and our DAS deck EAS, and then our weather receiver right there. That old Gorman Redlick is our weather receiver. And there's the backup transmitter that we later took to Kahili. And we put okay, we can move on from this. We're done with that video. And we'll look at the next video, which is just a continuation of that tour. So let's pop in the next video. Not this one, but the next one. We'll see it here in just a minute. We just did a pan of the conference room, which we took over. Let's see if we're going to get that next video up or not. If not, we can just move on to the next pictures. Gotcha. Understood. So, yeah, our producer, we do this by sharing on Google Photos, and it usually works pretty well, but sometimes it's a little difficult. So, one thing I was going to mention, Chris, I had never been to the transmitter side before. Don Muscle had, the guy I showed you earlier, David Lister had, but I had never been, so I didn't really know what to expect. I'd never really flown much in a helicopter before. I'm a small plane. Oh, here we go. This is just the small conference room we have. We shot this in the evening, so it was dark outside. A video monitor to make presentations on, but sorry it was messy because we took it over to do this work. And then here's the studio. I don't know why David Lister has that crazy hat on. I think he was trying to impress the other investors, of which his family is one. Oh, he was demonstrating the on-air light. So there's our little studio, which actually works quite nicely. We've got 3 mics in there and a little Axia board. We use a Playout 1 system for the automation, and then we have just a Windows computer to do production on. And the Playout 1 has remote voice tracking built in, so we have people, a few people all over the U.S. doing voice tracking there. Telephone hybrid there in the middle. The computer for, it says Harmony, now it's Playout 1, and a CD player. Oh, look, that's where all my headphone adapters are, right there. The production computer, VoIP phone, and some coffee mugs, and the hotline phone. All right, we can move on to the next picture. The next picture is just a reiteration. We'll look at it for just a moment when Suncast is able to pop it up. So the thing in the foreground, the silver thing, that is what we wanted to take up as our backup antenna. Now, we didn't want to have an antenna switching system to switch 2 different transmitters into the same antenna or to cross switch. We didn't have time, money, or anything like that, or planning time to install any kind of antenna switching system. So the main transmitter has its antenna, the backup transmitter has its antenna, and we can turn each transmitter on and off. So that's why we had that. The crown transmitter, you see, we were debating whether to take the crown transmitter up the mountain or whether to take the BW transmitter up the mountain. Well, the BW transmitter is quite a bit lighter. It's more power. It's over twice as powerful as the crown, but it's less weight. So we decided to take the BW transmitter up the mountain. Let's look at the next picture. This was getting ready to go in the helicopter. We had the equipment out and we're waiting for the helicopter. Next picture, this is the waiting room for the helicopter ride. If you take the cheap helicopter, this is the waiting room. What do you think, Chris? Pretty fancy?
Excellent. At least you know what to expect. That's good.
Yeah. Let's move on to the next photo. There's our ride arriving, and look, it's got a belly pod. It's got place in the belly there to put our gear. So let's look at the next picture. This was the ride. So we got a little time here. Let's take this ride. Taking off from the grounds of the Lihu'e airport. The identifier is LIH if you want to look that up. I'm in the back seat. keep forgetting the brand name of this helicopter. But this is the same helicopter that, painted black, it's always the kind of helicopter that the bad guys in the movies are flying. The bad guys. Yep. The good guys are usually in something that looks less menacing, but this is a menacing-looking little helicopter. And our pilot's name is Bruno. Bruno's on the left. You can't see him. That's David Lister on the front right. I got the back seat. And there we are headed off toward Mount Kahili. It is, let's see, from the airport, it's probably closer to 10 miles away, not 8.3 as our IP link is. You can see our altitude gaining there. We're now in the upper right quadrant on the instrument panel. We're just going past 1,000 feet above mean sea level. And we're going, I can't quite make out the airspeed indicator, but it's probably, looks like about 80 miles an hour maybe. Yeah. And the vertical speed indicator indicates we are going up at somewhere just under 1,000 feet per minute. So.
Nice.
Our pilot, Bruno, hopped out of the helicopter, and he's dressed in military fatigues, full camo fatigues, and his helicopter. I think he's ex-military. I don't know, but he sure looked the part when he popped out of the helicopter to invite us on board. So
to your transmitter sites pretty much by air. There's no terrestrial access.
I'll tell you about the walk in a minute. There's a competitor's transmitter site that doesn't cover as much of the island because you can see a lot of the island is blocked by the mountains back there. But that's the transmitter site of the station that's known as Kong.
Alrighty.
They say their logo something like, their slogan is like, listen to Kong all day long. So, but a number of other stations are at the shared transmitter site that we are headed to right here. Now, you see what a beautiful day it is? Little did we know that later on that would change. Now we're up to 100 miles an hour airspeed and just coming up on 2,000 feet above mean sea level, as you can see on the altimeter there. At this point, I had the headset on. I had good audio communications with the pilot. And as you could probably hear from the engine, it is a turbine engine. It's not a piston engine. There are some Robinson helicopters on island, and most of those are piston types. I think Robinson may be making a turbine now, but you can see the landscape there. There's power lines you can see going across the landscape there. And let's see, this video, the video here is a total of 5 minutes and 29 seconds. So we'll see how this moves along. Just want you to see the beauty here. So pretty. Of course, this is all volcanic. This is the Hawaiian Islands were formed by hot spots under the ocean, and then as the crust of the plate moves slowly toward the west and to the northwest, that's what makes the chain of islands and seamounts. Kauai being about the oldest thing there. It's eroding away over the millennia, and well, there we go. We are at this point well over halfway there. I've talked to other engineers. Oh yeah, you asked about how else to get there. You can drive to a park on the western side. We're on the eastern side here. You can drive to a park on the western side of Kahili, and then you can start walking. And some of the high school students do it on a dare every year, and sometimes they go up to the transmitter site and vandalize it, unfortunately. It had been recently vandalized. Our gear wasn't affected, but other people's tools were stolen. Blankets and bedrolls were stolen because they're kept up there in case of emergency. Also, water supplies and food supplies that were kept up there were stolen as well. So we're not excited about that. You see the transmitter site, that little building on the peak up there, that not the peak of the whole mountain, but that there is a peak there. We're going to fly over the ridge. This ridge is pretty much north-south. We're going to fly over that ridge, and the landing spot is another ridge on the west side. So there's two buildings there. The lower one isn't used much. I don't know who's in there. The upper one is where everybody is. The poles are all telephone poles, some of them in bad shape. And you can see the rope. You see the rope that helps you get up the side there? And here we are landing. And that's you can stop that video. In fact, when you go to the next video, Suncast, it shows the helicopter departing, and you can see the size of the landing zone, the LZ, you might call it. Go ahead and start that next video, Suncast, whenever you want to. It's just a short 30-second video of the helicopter departing. It's windy. Sometimes, the pilot gets up there and a big gust of wind comes over the ridge, and he's really got to adjust for it. Nope, not that picture. Let's go forward to the next video. Yeah, next one after this. Okay, we'll grab that in a minute. Little video of the helicopter taking off, and you can see what little space that it is to land on. That helicopter is just the right size and performance to land there. However, here we go. Let's watch this one. So the helicopter is one guy who was already on the mountain, and we found out there were several. One guy hopped in. He was done for the day. He hopped in the helicopter and took off. I think we probably got about a 15-second warm-up here as the blades come up to speed. And that's all our gear we pulled. Oh, there goes his hat. There we go. Bruno takes off, and away he goes back home. Yeah, beautiful terrain. All right, let's move on to the next picture, which shows you kind of how steep this and rugged this terrain is. That's from the landing zone. I took that picture right there. Next picture. You find the funniest things. So I'm walking up, and there's an Omnia 1 transmitter laying on one of the walkways as we go up. This is between the two buildings. Chris, imagine my surprise. Really? I walk up, and there's an Omnia 1 laying there. Well, it turns out the engineer for 5 stations who are competitors, was there, and he was moving some processors around for his HDs, and they used that processor, that Omnia 1, on one of their HDs, and then that's a little backup transmitter that it has there. I'm pretty sure that's a BW transmitter that he's got laying there, but he had just set it there temporarily. It wasn't laying out in the rain and so forth. Let's move on to some next pictures. We had a lot of debate. I'm going to skip past the politics and just tell you that there were a number of engineers there. Let's go ahead and go back to me and Chris. There were a number of engineers in the building when we got there, which was a total surprise. We were told by the people that we pay rent to that we could go ahead and mount a second antenna, so 1-bay backup, and that, of course, we need remote controls. We could mount a small antenna for IP radio. Well, the people who were on the site represented a different point of view. And I'm not saying who's right or wrong. I really don't know. You know what? Like many, many things, they're probably both right. They're probably both right. So, and as the blessing was, other engineers just want to help other engineers. They didn't want to present a problem. But the other engineers felt like they needed to tell their boss, hey, there's some guys up here. They pay rent, not to us, and they want to install some stuff. So a great compromise was figured out. Now let's go back to that picture. We didn't mount this antenna, this IP radio, on the building. We mounted it on an old handrail about 50 feet away from the building. There used to be a walkway here that the idea was it was for tourists to take a walking tour up there. Now that was a bad idea. We don't need tourists hanging around the transmitter site, especially with all that RF there. And you'll see a picture of that in a minute. But that handrail is set in concrete really well. That handrail, it's got some scarring on it, but you can see the lower horizontal handrail, it's stainless steel. That whole handrail is stainless steel. And it's been there for, 25, 30 years. There was a ham antenna mounted on that thing. And it's just as solid as it can be. So the competing engineer said, why don't you consider putting your IP radio antenna over there? It's 50 feet away. It's not on the building. You're not going to affect anybody else's RF. And you just got to run your cable. And so we did. Let's move to the next picture. And you can get a feel for the site. There we are, 50 feet away from the building. Look at all those antennas. What you can't see is, Chris, you see, it looks like kind of like a lot of those antennas are Italian made. Some may be Jam Pro penetrator style. I don't know, but you see the 2-bay antenna that's on the phone pole just above our IP dish, right?
Yeah, I can see that. Yeah.
Okay. There's a 3rd bay you can't see, and it's an inch above the ground.
Wow. Yeah, I've seen installations like that on mountaintops. Yeah.
Yeah. I've never seen an antenna bay an inch above the ground. And you know what? Unless somebody had dug out the ground under it, it'd be touching the ground. I think Don Muscle.
I'm surprised it works. Maybe it doesn't. They just think it does.
They get out great. They get out just great. Just great. So, okay.
Really?
I can see. Tell you what. Let's hit a couple more. Let's hit the next picture. But you can see how many antennas there are up there. This is the rack that our station is in. It's cramped in there. It's a little triangle-shaped building. It's not even square. It's triangle-shaped, just to fit in the little space, the little flat spot on top of the mountain. So there is KHKU-FM STL is the top STL. They are a community station. Ours is the next one down. Our transmitter is the VS1. That's right there. I had just installed that IP-controlled power strip on the left. But probably at the time this picture was taken, I didn't yet have IP connectivity. So we'll go into that. And tell you what, let's go ahead. Yeah, we better break for a commercial. This is Kirk Harnack along with Chris Tobin. I'm talking about my trip to Hawaii for KHKU, a station that I'm small part owner of. And we've got pictures coming up of a little rescue operation, some bad times on the mountain, and then finally success on the second day when we got everything working. So there you go. We're going to take a quick break. Our show is brought to you in part by our friends at Broadcast Bionics, and we'll be right back.
Hi, I'm Phil from Broadcast Bionics in the UK, and we've been helping broadcasters and podcasters to work remotely for some time. But in 2020, this has become more of a necessity for many. X-Screen, Bionic Studio, and our other products can be fully functional via the internet on a VPN connection or RDP session. If you have any type of Telos VX, HX6 or IQ6, you may already be using the free edition of X-Screen 2, giving you a software interface to go alongside your VSET controller. The subscription edition not only adds a cloud database and unrestricted workstation licenses, but also allows the user to call screen using a USB headset. Bionic Talk Show, part of the Bionic Studio, also allows this. Up until now, it's mainly been used for remote broadcasts, but now more and more stations have call screeners and producers working from home or socially distanced offices. The teams can still collaborate, communicate, and deliver programming with the help of our tools. Many routers will have a VPN option. Your local IT specialist can help with this. Using a VPN, our workstation client software can be run on a home PC or laptop, as if it was running on a machine at the studio. With remote desktop, the software still runs on a PC at the station. Simple port forwarding on your router may be all that's required to then control that PC and deliver the headset audio from another device using RDP, which is available as part of Windows. For technical help, our support team are on hand. You can email them on support@bionics.co.uk. Combined with our Anywhere and Skype TX for radio products, broadcast quality audio can be delivered from contributors around the corner or around the globe. They can even instant message with the shared chat windows and see the now playing information from within the Anywhere remote web interface. For more information, go to bionic.radio. We're helping broadcasters around the world to adapt to the new normal with innovative tools from Broadcast Bionics.
Thanks so much to Broadcast Bionics for sponsoring This Week in Radio Tech. Bionics.radio is the place to go to see all their stuff, and represented in the U.S. anyway by Broadcaster General Store. Okay, we got a few pictures to show here of the rescue. Here's what happened. Let's look at this. Is what the landing zone looked like later in the day. Now, at 2:15 p.m., the helicopter came back, took all the rest of the guys off the mountain. We had more work to do. It was a beautiful, clear day at 2:15 p.m., but weather changes fast. So at 4:15, and we had agreed to get a pickup at 4, but at 4:15 it looked like this. And we were in constant communication with the helicopter company, and they said, you're probably going to need to crawl down the mountain or hike down the mountain. I don't think anybody from the helicopter company had ever done it themselves. So let's look at the next picture. we started to hike down the mountain. That we found out later when we were done is called Dead Man's Bluff. We had to cross that as well as numerous other ups and downs, and we ended up climbing 1,000 feet down to 1,000 feet lower elevation. That's me not very happy with a backpack and carrying my drone in a case along with me. But we didn't know if we were getting back the next day. We didn't know if we could. This helicopter company told me that they were not flying the next day or the next day. And because of the quarantine regulations that just went into effect again in Hawaii or on this island, on Kauai, they weren't going to fly again until the quarantine went away. So let's look at the next picture. We hiked for about an hour to down 1,000 feet down to a pickup zone that we agreed with the pilot. We were in texting communications with Bruno, the pilot. And I know that Suncast is working hard. I know these videos are a bit tough to bring up. But we got a little 7-second video here when he found us and we found him. And because I kept texting our exact location via Google Maps to the pilot. And they can't fly after it gets dark. So after twilight, they can't fly. This was 8 minutes before sunset. 8 minutes before sunset, Bruno found us. We ran through that muddy area to get picked up by. We were so happy because the alternative was to spend the night either in the transmitter shack, although we weren't climbing back up 1,000 feet to go to that. Next picture, Suncast, will be my muddy feet. So if you can get to that one, that'd be great. So Bruno picked us up with 8 minutes of sunlight or before sunset. And we flew back, and we got back. I mean, it was still light enough to get to the airport, but they don't fly IFR; they fly VFR. That was how muddy it was coming down the mountain. It was nasty. That's my feet, and I'm sure the helicopter company wasn't delighted about that. So let's move on to the next picture. One thing that I got to install was actually this is I probably put this a little out of order. This was the result of our work the next day as well. Got a Wise cam working so we could see our equipment. And you can see how cramped it is. And there's terribly, terribly cramped. Let's move on to the next picture. A little view back out the hotel window. The next morning, let's take a look at breakfast. We went to a really nice place for breakfast. So if you're ever in Kauai, you need to go to Country Kitchen in Kapa'a because it's just absolutely fantastic. That's the Elvis waffle right there with peanut butter and bananas on it. So let's move on. We did get, so we got the IP link on the mountain installed that afternoon, that first day. So we had to go back and tweak the dish at the studio, luckily, we had installed the studio well enough to have viable signal up in the mountain. But then you got to come back to your origination point. We didn't have two crews, we didn't have people at each end at the same time to point this stuff. It's one end then the other. Luckily, from the studio, we could see the mountain. I couldn't say the other way around. We couldn't identify which building was ours, from 8 miles away. So we went back and tweaked, and it was already really good. We only got about 1 dB better signal at that point. Let's move on. I'll show you the screenshots again. This is getting ready now. The next day, we really wanted to get back up the mountain. We had left a 60-pound duffel bag on the mountain to climb down. So we had a lot of equipment still up there, tools, gear, a couple more Wise cams, all kinds of stuff that we didn't really want to leave up there, but we had to climb down the mountain. So we found Blue Hawaiian Helicopter Company, and this was their last day to fly. They had a few tourists to fly around, and then they flew us up before the tourists, and they came and got us after. So this is getting ready to go. We can skip these videos. We've already seen helicopter videos, so skip on. There we go. One thing, at a shared site, engineers do try to cooperate, right? And so the engineer for some of the competing stations, who I'd met the day before, terrific guy. I guess I could give his name. It's Robert Mumm. Robert Mumm. He had been in Miami, Florida. And anyway, he was engineering there. And he said, hey, I left one of my transmitters a little undermodulated. Could you help me out? And I said, sure, happy to. So this was on an Omnia 1, not the same one that we saw, but a different Omnia 1 in our building. So we went and I went and boosted that up for him, provided him with lots of evidence that I boosted the level up a bit for him. Next picture, please. Now you'll see the finished installation. There's that antenna assembled. It's a vertical FM antenna on the left I don't know what brand it is, if it's branded as Nikon or one of the other ones, but that's it. And we can feed the output of the BW transmitter to it through some 1/2-inch coax and a jumper cable at the end. And it works beautifully. Very low VisWor. It covers just fine. And there's another view. You see there's some of that handrail that's left over there that we mounted that to. So there's our IP link, our vertical only backup antenna, which, might never get used, but there it is, or rarely. And then all the other stuff that's on the mountaintop. All right, let's move to the IP link graphic. This is, I captured this graphic. I love this new Ubiquiti stuff, and I'm sure other manufacturers have got sophisticated stuff too, but Ubiquiti really does a nice job of putting all this graphical information on. So if you browse into the IP radio nowadays on Ubiquiti, you get a beautiful dashboard. And so you can see what frequency you're on in each direction, your signal strength on chain 1 and chain 2, because there's 2 different data chains going on. Chris, I don't set these up for maximum data rate. I don't want maximum throughput. I want reliability. And so I've even got some of these that I've set up for what you would call QPSK modulation, or even BPSK, not the 16 QAM or the 64 QAM or the 256 QAM possible modulation that gets you lots of bandwidth. I don't need lots of bandwidth. I need reliability. And so I typically set mine up with as much power as they will do, although this is automatically regulated to a transmit power of -4 dBm with those dishes. And it's doing what they call 4x rate. So you can kind of see what's, and so I get a throughput capacity of about 30 to 32 megabits per second on the 8.26 mile path. That's way more than I need. I mean, we're using literally a few hundred kilobits, but we have that possibility. Chris, does this look like any of the, oh, Chris. Okay. All right. Chris not available right now. All right. So
no, I'm back. I'm back quickly. That's okay.
Okay.
This looks familiar. Yes. I've used it. The Ubiquiti. It's very handy. I've used the QAM. Actually, I've used 256 QAM in a couple of places that technically you shouldn't be able to, but it seemed to work fine.
Yeah. Wow.
Well, I think they had some new firmware updates about 2 years ago when I was installing the links, and big difference from the earlier version to the newer version, and it worked. But I usually go lower just to get a little overhead and robustness.
Also, I don't
need 500 megabits back and forth. So
yeah. Well, if you're an ISP or a WISP and you're feeding a site that then feeds a bunch of people, sure, you need all that bandwidth. Also, I have found it greatly helpful to narrow the bandwidth. Out of the box, they're typically going to be 40, 60, or 80 megahertz of bandwidth. I don't know that there was any interference up there. Neither one was showing much of any other usage, but I set it up to 10 meg, the narrowest bandwidth anyway. And that's all I need. That's really all. And that's being a good citizen.
Yeah, that's
why
the way to
hog
do it.
up a bunch of space, right, when you don't need it.
Yep, that's true. That's true.
So, Suncast, if we can show the next video, the aerial, the drone footage, that would be great if you can make that play. So let's, he's going to try to bring that up. I brought my drone up both days that we went up there, and we were so busy. I really only had about 8 minutes to fly it. And so Suncast is going to try to bring that drone video up. It's a 1 minute video. Here we go. So there's the site from my drone. And I just manually did an orbit here. So if it bobbles a bit, it's because I was just manually flying it. Again, the lower building, I think was the original building, may have been, but it's not used for much of anything now. Most everything there's a TV translator on that site. That's what to us, the short with the 3 white panel antennas, that's a TV translator. And then the others are almost all FMs. There is some wireless ISP going on there. It's private. It's not a public internet service provider. It's the company that owns a great deal of the mountain, distributes to some other businesses that they own in the area. Now we're looking southeast. We're coming around. Yeah, that's still southeast right there. That's the Pacific Ocean in the background. There's some more mountains that are south of Lihu'e. And then now we're pretty much looking east toward Lihu'e at that point. And my little dish is over on the left-hand ridge there. So that's all there is of that that video. We can skip the other helicopter video suncasts, and so those are a little hard to show. And if you want to, we can go right on to the food picture. I tell you, the whole time we were there, with COVID and all that, it's hard to get anything but drive-through fast food. But we found one place that was open. I'm a little bit afraid to say the name of this restaurant, Chris. It's called the Bull Shed.
I like that. It's good. That means it's good food.
Yeah. Well, it's pricey. And people who go there were pretty well dressed. I was still muddy from my second trip there and the scrambling around that I still had to crawl under the building to poke coax through the floor of the building and things like that. So I was muddy by the time we got down to the Bull Shed, but that was my dinner. And I got to tell you, it was nice.
Yeah, it looks good.
Only nice dinner I had, really. Last picture is what I kind of meant to say for last, but you've already seen one like it, and that is I can go to the Wise Cam right now and get that picture. Although we couldn't find the light switch to turn the lights off in that place. Somebody was up on the mountain a day or two after us, and they turned the lights out. But that's okay because the cam has infrared as well. So we got a nice, clear, black and white IR image now when I go to it. Now, the other thing is you can see in this picture, just to the left of the STL receivers, you can see that IP power strip. And there are 6 outlets you can control individually, and then there's 2 that are always powered on there. So each outlet is rated for 15 amps. So the backup transmitter, our backup is in the bottom of the rack. If you look all the way down to the bottom of the rack to the transmitter that has a silver handle in the middle of it, horizontal, that's a BWTX600 version 2, and it's got a nice web interface on it. Of course, the Nautel VS1 has a web interface. Unfortunately, it still has the flash interface. Yeah, and so I've got to find a browser that'll look at that because any browser I've got installed isn't looking at it. But I can get to it. I can absolutely get to it. So, Chris, the last technical thing to talk about, you can come back to us, is that remember how the Nautel transmitter, I needed to be able to cycle its power, not turn it off remotely and turn it back on, because if it says, I'm not coming on because I had too many power bumps. So what I did is I bought a big contactor that is normally closed. Okay. And I'm running the 240 volts from the wall to the transmitter. I'm running that through these normally closed contacts. So they just sit there. It doesn't require power on the contactor to power the Nautel. It requires no power on the contactor to power the Nautel. So we remove power from it by turning on one of the outlets on that IP outlet strip. And that pulls the contactor in, removes power from those normally closed contacts, lets the Nautel recycle, no power at all. And then we turn that outlet off, which restores the contactor, the normally closed contacts, and the Nautel has power again. We've tested that, works great. Had to describe that in the remote control for the IP power outlet strip. Had to say, hey, turning this on turns the Nautel off. Okay, don't turn this on unless you really mean to. And by the way, never. On the IP radio, I've got that on an outlet that you can cycle. Never turn that outlet off. You can power cycle it because this IP strip, you can press a button to power cycle an outlet. But if you turn it off, you'll never gain control of it again. So you go to the mountain because you're going to lose. Yeah. Yeah. So there you go. The last thing, I tell you what, let's take a quick break for commercial. I got my tip of the week is going to be the one thing that we had to do to make the IP work. Because remember, Don Muscle told us IP has a really tough time on that mountain because of all the RF right above you, right around you. There's a 3-bay antenna literally 6 feet outside your face, just outside the building. And the building is not a Faraday cage. It's just cheap construction. So the one thing that made my IP work, and I'll tell you about that when we come right back. Our show's brought to you in part by our friends at Max Connect Wireless. We're going to hear a little testimonial from them. Be right back.
I'm Gary Morrill, Midwest Regional Director of Engineering for Alpha Media. When I first spoke with Josh Bone about Max Connect, he told me they'd work great for remote transmitter sites where connectivity was a challenge. And he's absolutely right. We even have sites where we're using this as a backup to our STL using Max Connect's dual carrier option, and it works perfectly. We also have times where we need to be able to get out to a venue where it's kind of challenging because everybody and his brother is trying to stream video at the same time, like at a big sporting event. And you know what? Our data gets through every time because it's prioritized packet data. It works for us. It'll work for you. Max Connect. Check it out.
Thanks a lot to Josh Bone. And we brought the Max Connect up the mountain with us in case we didn't have any other service. Turns out we did. We had good service from T-Mobile and from Verizon on top of that, Mount Kahili. But I'll tell you what, in places where we didn't have a crowd of people on Facebook around us. Well, maybe that first day. Hey, we're also brought to you by the folks at Angry Audio. This is the Bluetooth audio gadget. It is amazing. You need this in your home studio or in your podcast studio because this is how you get phone calls on the air easily. You don't have to pay for a POTS line. You don't have to pay for a VoIP line with an analog terminal adapter to go to a hybrid. You just use the Bluetooth audio gadget from Angry Audio at angryaudio.com. You easily pair this. There's a switch right here. It's spring-loaded like that. Puts it in pairing mode to pair it with your switch. And this works great with, even studios when you have a number of different announcers in there. They can easily pair it to the cell phone that they bring. They can call, their guest who they want to put on the air and put it on the air through the Bluetooth audio gadget. Remember, our friends at Angry Audio also have the equipment and the dongles, the adapters from Studio Hub, because Studio Hub is now owned by Angry Audio. So don't listen to anybody that tells you Studio Hub went out of business. They're still making all the adapters and dongles and cables and things like that. So check it out. The angryaudio.com website, angryaudio.com. Call your favorite dealer. Don't settle for an imposter. Get the original Studio Hub because, by golly, that's the stuff that works best. angryaudio.com. Check it out as well. Appreciate their sponsor. Okay, Chris, the first day I brought a MikroTik router with me. I reconfigured it to just be a switch and a hotspot. That's all I needed. I wanted a hotspot for the Wise camera because they don't work with wired connections, only Wi-Fi. So I had a MikroTik metal encased router that I made it into just a home access point. That's all. Didn't need routing capabilities, so it just needed to be a switch and a hotspot. We plugged everything into it. It would work for a few minutes, and then it would get stupid. Power cycled it. It would work for a few minutes, and then it would get stupid. It wouldn't work. It wouldn't pass anymore. Wouldn't pass data anymore. If I took the IP radio and plugged it directly into my laptop, it worked fine. But if I plugged it back into the router, it wouldn't work. Reboot the router switch, work for a few minutes, and then quit. I said, this must be the RF problem that Don Muscle warned me about. So I found some Nautel installation kits laying around that came with those ferrite cores, right? And so each of my Cat5 cables, and there were only three of them or four of them coming into the switch and the power cable. I ran each of those through a ferrite core, did all that, worked for a few minutes, and then it would quit. I thought, you know what? There's a grounding stud on the back of the MikroTik router. I mean, what foresight of MikroTik to put a grounding stud on the back of the router? But ground is a little hard to come by in that mountaintop building. There's a ground here and a ground there, and you're not really sure what's ground. And hey, you're in the middle of a huge RF field from this antenna just outside your face, outside the wall, and what's really ground? I thought, well, the closest thing I have to ground that's convenient is the grounding stud on the back of my Nautel transmitter. So I got a piece of green-coated wire that was laying around. Robert Mumm said I was welcome to use it. And I grounding stud on the MikroTik to the grounding stud on the Nautel transmitter. It worked a treat so far. So I've been gone from there for almost a week, and it's working perfectly. We have full access, no hiccups, no problems. So in that high RF field, thank goodness, the MikroTik has a metal case. That's one reason why I chose it. By the way, I did take another switch up there that didn't have Wi-Fi, just a switch. It never worked. It was a Netgear metal encased switch. Didn't have a grounding stud. Metal encased. I just wanted to try a different switch to see, hey, maybe a different switch will work. And it wouldn't work at all. So at least the MikroTik worked for a few minutes, but after I grounded it, at least to what is the best ground I had handy, it worked fine, and it's still working to this moment. So that's my story. I'm sticking to it. Grounding was very helpful to the IP.
Yeah, I believe that. I've done similar things with a couple of microwave links on towers. Get a call that something's wrong with the link, and I go up and I look. I'm like, well, there's a reason why they put this ground stud on here. And the guy, the engineer for the station, or whatever, is like, well, yeah, but that doesn't do anything. It's just on the chassis. I said, well, no, technically, the chassis is part of the RF shielding. If you open up the unit, you'll notice there's a braid around the outside of the rim. When you close the clamshell, if you will, of the housing. Yeah. I said that's the RFI seal, but the ground stud is there to give you access to that, to drain it off, if you will. And there's other things that are going on there. So, just for giggles and grins, I took out a spade lug, hooked a wire, did the thing, and sure enough, we looked on the scope, and we're looking at the data stream coming down the line, down the tower, and there's no hazy-looking things on the outside of the square wave. It's just very clean square wave data going up and down. Just the ground wire. Because they happen to be sitting just 30 feet below a master antenna with 5 radio stations running it. Oh, I think their TPOs was somewhere in the order of 10 kilowatts.
Yeah.
So, it's you'd be surprised. If you want, you get real fun. You take out a little meter, and you can make a little diode setup, and you can measure the field strength that you're in, or you can get an RF meter, RFR meter, and go, yeah, you know what? I can see the little lights are flashing. We're getting close to the FCC limits. Yeah, there's a lot of RF here. I don't think the ground was necessary, but we'll try it anyway. And I have done grounding on things in some places. People just like, that's impossible. I said, no, it makes sense. RF, you'd be surprised where RF goes. It's it finds its way everywhere.
I should have done the grounding first. I don't know that the toroids were necessary. They don't hurt anything to put the toroids, loop the Cat 5s through the toroids. So I did both, and it's working.
It's probably the way the case was designed, so it drains it out, so it creates the isolation from the inside to out. I bet you if you open up that case, they probably have RF little ferrites on the circuit board, or the I/O, it comes and goes. I've seen that on RF switches, Ethernet switches I'd use in RF environments. If you pop the metal cover, the RJ45 jacks right behind them have these little transformers or ferrites.
Now the WISP that's up there, and we got to go in a second, but the WISP that is up there, they took a different approach. They put a metal box, like maybe you'd call it a NEMA enclosure, but a metal box on the wall. And they put their switches in there. Now I know they had RF troubles with the box open, and they were trying different techniques to get rid of the RF. But I think when they closed the box up, things settled down for them. So I used the case as my Faraday, as my shield, and they were using an external box hung on the wall.
Yeah, although that works too. I've done that.
Yeah. Chris, I've taken up all our time.
That's all right. That was good pictures. That was good information. I like that. I'm still curious about the horizontal antenna, though. I got to look into that. I'm curious.
It just looks like this fork, like that. And there's two of them.
I know which one that is. Yeah, I know which one that is. I've seen those. I'm just looking at the lay of the land and the way that's set up. I'm just interesting that you.
I should have pointed out in one of the pictures, but you could barely see it, so it was hard to point out. So.
That's okay.
We got to go. Hey, next week, Chris, we got somebody on that I believe. Let me find his name here real quick. Next week, our guest is a New Yorker by the name of Andy Gladding. Oh, you know Andy.
Yes. Yeah, I know. Yeah, yeah. I'll leave it at that. That's good.
Okay. Well, is it going to be a good show?
Fun. It'll be fun. Yes, it'll be a good show.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, it'll
I found a picture of him on Facebook. I think he was shooting skeet.
Yeah.
That'd be Andy?
That'd be Andy. Yeah.
Okay.
It's good. No, we'll have fun. Matter of fact, I'm surprised he hasn't called me yet about that. But yeah,
he said he had dinner with you or coffee or something.
We had pizza. Yeah, he and I and another friend of ours, we got together a couple of weeks ago in downtown Manhattan. Yep.
Yeah.
It was good.
I don't know how I came across him. I think he may have commented on something I said online, and he says he does some audio for national news networks and such.
Yep. That's correct. That is correct.
Okay. All right. And then on Christmas Eve, if you want to join us, you can. It'd be great if you would. But on Christmas Eve, our show is with John Bissett, and he's going to.
Oh, that would be fun.
Yeah. He's a good guy, and he'll tell us some good Christmas stories and such. Hey, we got to go. Chris, thank you so much for listening to me blabber on for an hour and ooh and ah at my pictures. I appreciate it.
It reminded me of some sites that I've been to, so it was good. It's true stuff.
And big thanks to our producer, Suncast, dealing with some new gear, and they did a great job. Thank you for doing all that, Suncast. I appreciate it. Thanks also to Andrew Zarian, the founder of the GFQ Network. Lots of other fine podcasts are here, too, including What the Tech. We got to go. We'll see you next week on This Week in Radio Tech. Bye-bye.